Hello, folks. It's 7 on the dot, so I'm going to just start with intros. And so welcome to Greater Cincinnati Grotto's monthly practice. We're using this one as a combined vertical practice or winter indoor vertical practice and technical topic this month. And so this is the annual, semi-annual knots practice. We have Kyle here in person, GCG member, and I see a few people online. I'm guessing there's going to be a few people who continue to join. Does anybody want to introduce themselves while it's online?
Hey, Steph, it's Kelly McNamara.
Hey, nice to see you.
Yes. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah. And then I see Kaylee. We all know Kaylee, GCG member. And oh, you've got the cat. How's he doing? Oh, Rolly.
He's good. Sorry, it was easier for me to do this from here today, but thank you for hosting it.
Yeah, awesome. All right, and then Nina, I think just walked in. You're not late at all. We're just chit-chatting. And I've got some ropes here, so if you want to like grab some rope and stuff, I'm gonna be trying to like face the camera and face you guys, and maybe I just need to like figure out how to reorient ourselves or something. But basically, just doing intros and stuff. Where's my knots?
Hey, Nina.
Hey, Mac.
Hey.
I'm just seeing who's on. I couldn't find my rope stash. I've been caving too much.
Don't
so
worry.
I brought shoestrings.
Oh, that's super cute. But we've got rope, and actually what I normally end up doing, the knot book. I've got the Ashley Book of Knots. So if you know Anmar Mirza, he's the former national coordinator for the NCRC. He does this silly thing where he calls it this book of the Cave James Bible or something, and there's a reading every Monday out of it. When he talks about knots, it's the Book of Ashley, because the Book of Ashley is actually the like knot book or whatever. So anyway, and it's Terry. Hey, Terry. So if you're at home, hopefully you've got a little bit of rope to work with. Kaylee's got her rope ready. We will also probably be going over Pro-6. So for the folks that are here in person, I do have some Pro-6 cut. And we're going to go through the water knot, which is done on webbing. So we've got a little pile over here as well. And if you all don't own webbing or Pro-6, like I actually have a sufficient stash that I'll just cut you a few pieces tonight and you can take that home.
I think I also have a resource for seamstresses, which was my major, was soft goods for webbing. I hope this works.
Yeah, awesome. Super cool. All right, so we were going to go through the NCRC intro knots. So there's a when you go to NCRC, the National Cave Rescue Commission, there's a series of knots that they have as part of their entry skills. And this is just a good review for us because these are sort of the basic caver knots. If you take nothing else away from tonight, I think the couple most important knots you can pick up from tonight are the figure 8 on the bite, the butterfly knot, and maybe the Pro-6 hitch. So if you like forget most everything else what I'm going to show you tonight, like I think those 3 are probably ones that you want to master. I do tie things like in multiple different ways, so hopefully there's something that will stick, because sometimes doing this off a book or off of YouTube, it's really confusing. So let's try to do a couple different ways because some things stick with people and some things don't. So what I'd like to get started with is the figure 8 on a bite. So talking about knots and some of the things that we'd like to see in our knots, we like to see a 4-inch tail on the knot because that'll help it prevent from getting like backed out. If the tail's too short, it'll back out on itself, and that's super not cool. Generally, the way that I find like 4 inches is like my palm size is about 4 inches. So if you can like wrap your palm around it, that's about 4 inches right there. So that's my tail length right there. So for the folks on the phone, just that palm right there, that if you grab that, that's about 4 inches. So that'll give you a nice tail. So generally when I'm looking for the bite, I'll grab about that much rope for a figure 8 on a bite. That's maybe just a little bit over a foot and a half or so. And what I'm going to do is I like to tie the figure 8 this way, where I face the bite of the knot down across my palm. So you can see my thumb is sort of pinching it, for those on the phone, this way. And I'm facing my bite downwards. What I found is that if the bite does not get whipped around, you have a better time of dressing your knot perfectly the first time around. If what a dressed knot is, we'll take a look at it as we tie it. So basically your figure 8 on a bite, you've got it on a diagonal across the bottom of your palm like that. Maybe what I should do is face this way because I'm facing you guys. And then everybody can look at my silly, messy kitchen here, and I can
That's
talk
great.
to everybody at once.
Who
Okay,
cares?
better. So we're gonna face the bite down this way. You have your little finger gun, right? What you do is I'm whipping my tail instead of whipping my bite. So my tail comes around the back of my fingers here, and I just pinch it like that. Does that kind of make sense? Awesome. Then the bite, we're going to fold it over the front on a 90-degree. And then the finger gun, you're going to slip your fingers out from the finger gun and push that bite up the top. You can pinch it now and pull the tails one leg at a time. And what we've got here is a dressed figure 8. We will do that again. We will do that again. So we'll talk about knot dressing in a hot second as well. But basically what we've got is bite going across the palm in the front, right? Here's my finger gun, and here's my tail, my 2 tails, right? I'm going to take my 2 tails, put them around the back, and then basically bring them to where it crosses, and I've got a pinch, basically. Perfect. You can uncoil the rope and take more rope out. And basically this bite is going to get folded over the front. Yeah, there we go. And then basically it's folded over the front, and it's going to come around the back and go where those fingers were. And so it traces the number 8. The reason why we like this method, and this is only one of many ways to tie the knot here, is that you can get a nice tight bite by doing that. What we generally like to see is like no bigger than a 2-inch bite when you're rigging, which that's perfect though for other reasons. So you want a big bite, like a 4-inch bite, when you have it as a termination knot. So if it's the knot at the bottom of your rope, when you're rappelling on it, you actually want a really long bite because, again, similar to the tail where you want it at least 4 inches so it doesn't back out. If it's your bottom knot, that 4-inch is great. Yeah, right there. Look, Nina's got a great knot.
Big boy.
Yeah. So that won't back out when it's the termination knot at the bottom of the rope. So that's also nice. So we talk about knot dressing. We like knots to be dressed properly because they're tidy, easy to tie, easy to untie later, and easily recognizable. So part of the reason why we want a dressed knot is so that the next person who's coming along and they're looking at your rigging, they basically can say, yep, that's a figure 8. But if it's like super messy, like for instance, like that, where it's flipped over, that would be an undressed knot right there. And what that ends up doing is, one, it's unrecognizable, but once somebody's rappelled on that, that'll really, really tighten down. And once it's tightened down like that, that's going to be almost impossible to untie. So once you put a whole person's body weight on that, that's just going to be very, very difficult. Now, there is an easy way to untie figure 8s. So here's, this beautiful figure 8, but now, all 10 of us have rappelled down this thing and it's super tight. And we now need to de-rig it. How are we going to untie it? Well, it's super, super tight. And what a lot of people try to do is they try to grab that bite and they try to like wiggle it back through. That's actually really hard to do because all the tightness is right here in the middle of the knot. What you do is you grab the fleshy part of your thumb, and this bottom strand here, you're going to grab this and push down on it. And that strand will loosen. Then you push down on the next one. And that'll open the knot for you. And then you can start maybe doing it again 1 or 2 more times. And then the bite will actually push through very easily. So these are like small, weak person tricks. So that way, I say, look, don't brute force your way through life, right? If you work with the small, weak people, they have to work a little smarter. So that's a small, weak person trick right there. So again, when the knot's really way too tight, you just, fleshy part of the thumb, bop that down, and then you can work it back out pretty easily. Does anybody need to see the figure 8 again?
I do.
Okay, that's perfect. This is one of like the crucial knots in my opinion. So, big bite. I grab it where it's facing down across my palm.
Gotcha.
And then those 2 tails will whip around the 2 fingers here, and you just pinch that. And then that bite will fold across at 90 degrees. And then it's coming around the back and then going to come up the place where your 2 fingers were. And then you can just tighten it down. So, and you can sort of just like pinch the bite there and then pull these 2 strands, and that'll make it nice and tidy as well. So that's how you get a perfectly dressed figure 8 without too much trouble. I think when folks try to there's other ways to tie the figure 8 where you're whipping the head around. If you whip the bite of the knot around, it has a tendency that all the twisties end up twisted inside the knot. By instead whipping the tail around in the first step, you're actually taking all the twisties and they're getting released through the end. So that kind of helps a little bit. And this is getting recorded, so you can go home and take a look at it again, skip over to the knots that you need help with and stuff. So just one more time, pinch, that's the tail's going to come around the back to the front. And then you've kind of got that breast cancer ribbon going on. I don't know how PC that is to say. Fold this forward and then push the bite up through the back. And you've got this nice tiny bite, and then pull the 2 legs. So the figure 8. All right, cool. So now a couple variations off of this, right? When we like the figure 8 because it's a nice, strong knot. We'll use this on, anchors, rigging. If you had an anchor built already, you could, clip a carabiner into this and, rappel off that end or something. Or it's a nice termination knot at the bottom of a rope. There are times when we want a double-eared figure 8, and so the instances of that may be like anchoring. When you're putting bolted anchors, and I've got my mess of things on the floor here. So for example, we could talk about hardware today too. I mean, stuff's all over the floor. So we've got bolts, right? These are what, 10 centimeter double wedges, 8 mil diameter. Anyway, these are used when we've drilled into the wall, for example, to go rig an anchor. And a double-eared knot may be helpful because you basically are sharing the load and distributing the load between these 2 anchors, and you have backups, right? So what would really, really suck is if you had like a single bolt into the wall and then you were relying on that one bolt and it pulled out, right? So if the rock was weak and something happened to that one bolt, well, we're all going down with the bolt now. That's not good. So what we normally like to do is we start and end any rigging with double anchors. So you would use 2 of these guys and put 2 hangers on the wall, just for load sharing and for redundancy. So that's kind of nice to have double anchors. When we do that, you need a double-eared knot in order to, hang on to the both anchors. And that's where the double-eared figure 8 comes from. Kyle, what I'm going to have you do is hold these 2 at some location. Okay, cool. So there's actually a really cool, easy trick to size your double-eared knot correctly the first time around. And so we talked about that 4-inch tail that you want so that things don't back out. So you're going to find that 4-inch tail. And what we like to do with double-eared knots is we want to have a nice load distributing like angle on it. So there's something called vector forces. And with double-eared knots, what you don't want to do is have your knot like be pulling in like almost this straight line direction here. Like if these anchors are super wide, if the knot was like right here, you would end up pulling out like this, and you start to increase the amount of force that's being pulled on each of these anchors. And that's not good, because you don't want to be, you want to be load sharing. You don't want to be like yanking the anchor out of the wall, right? So what I like to say is peace sign is good. Peace sign's about, what would that be, like 30 degrees? Peace sign's good. L is for loser, because at 90 degrees, we start, sharing the load. I think that's like a 70% load on each one, which is now not really sharing it so much. You're like almost putting more force on it than you want. So peace sign good, L's for loser. Nobody likes shaka guy, okay? Like hang loose guy, not cool, right? So that's the way to remember it. Peace sign good, L's for loser. Shaka's bad, because once you start getting to this 120-degree angle here, like what the shaka is, you end up with 100% load on both anchors, on each anchor. So you're not really sharing it anymore at that point. So what we'd like to do is, you see where the 2 anchors are in the cave, and what you're going to do is kind of place a knot where you think the angle is good. So about here, I'm probably kind of still close to 90, but maybe if I went a little bit lower, I'm getting like a 60-degree angle or like a 30-degree angle. So that may be where I want my knot to kind of distribute my load better between the 2 angles. So that's kind of how you start sizing that double-eared figure 8. You're going to start with that 4-inch tail and kind of put your hand right where that 4-inch tail is. And that ensures that that's where the knot starts. And I kind of imagine in my head that force angle, and my knot's going to be about here then. And what I'm going to do is kind of pull my rope up to that first anchor. Assume there's a carabiner there. So, I would be clipping it into a carabiner. So there's that first.
Are you in a locking carabiner or just
locking? Well, I generally use a locking. There's people who have more balls than I do who will actually use non-lockers, but that's me.
your video, baby?
Yeah, who do we got to put on mute? Probably. I'm going to mute this person. Excuse me. All right, so that's that 4-inch tail. We found our angle. We're going to bring it up to the first anchor, pinch the rope kind of when it comes back down to where my knot's supposed to be, grab the next segment, bring it up to the next anchor, and when it's doubled up, I pinch it. You see how I kind of have like these 2 ears now? What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep that pinched, and I count about 10 inches because that's about how long of rope actually gets sucked up and used inside the knot body. So then at that 10-inch point, I'll pinch the rope there and bring it up to where my other hand was. And now I've sized the amount of rope that I'm going to need to tie the knot right where I need it to be between those 2 anchors. So that's how you size the double-eared figure 8 correctly the first time around and don't have to rework it 100 times. So as you like kind of practice this, I just want you guys to know that there's like easy ways to like help yourself along. So similar to how we tied the figure 8 before, we're going to again hold it across the palm with that pinch between the, first finger and thumb. And we're going to tie it the same way we did the figure 8 earlier, where we take that tail, bring it around those first 2 fingers, pinch it. This big bite comes and folds across the front. But this time, instead of taking the head of the bite and pushing it through, what we're going to do is we're going to take, the 2 strands that are kind of dangling, and we're going to end up pushing them through the top of the knot. And so you can see that's forming our ears right there. And then that bite at the end is going to flip over the top front, and we're going to just yank through the slack. And you can see now we've got the 2 ears, and that the bite basically became this little strand that's down here. So, on the figure 8, we had 2 strands at the top and 2 on the bottom. Basically, all it is that flip made it 2 on the top, 3 on the bottom. So we've got the double-eared knots now, and you can kind of see where it would hang, and you've kind of got that nice little angle in between. So if you all want to practice doing that, that's sort of the idea of what the double-eared figure 8 is. So for the purposes of practice, you probably don't have to go through the procedure of sizing it, but I did want you guys to at least know that that's how to size it properly. So just grab a big bite, because you need a lot of rope for this one. And you're going to dangle it again across the front palm there. Whip that tail around the back of the 2 fingers. Pinch it. Fold that across the front. And this time, instead of taking the bite and pushing it through, we're going to take the 2 strands and kind of grab that and pull it through. And then that bite is still back here, and it's going to flip over the front. And all you're going to do is just pull these 2 ears nice and tight up there. So oops. So you put the boat through, didn't you? So you were about to tie a regular figure 8, which is perfect. And so let's see, where are we at? I'm going to start mine over so I can follow along with you. Bite across the front, tail around the back. Right. This bite comes and folds across the front. Mm-hmm. And so now the 2 strands, so instead of putting the head through, we're going to take the 2 strands and just kind of pinch that, inside it. And then, and so you kind of hang on to those while you take.
Mine's very tiny.
Yeah. Yeah. You need excessive rope to do one of these, but and you can totally uncoil that. That's it will be fine. Cool. So that's our bunny ears. Double-eared knot. Cool. When we are, And what's fun about sort of this, because there's multiple other methods of tying the bunny ear that I've seen done, but what's nice about this one, where you're sort of pushing the 2 strands through the top here, is you can also go through other variations of this. So once you start to try to do party knots and things like that, like the trick knots you do around the campfire, you can start making triple-eared knots and things like that using that method. So you can have a tri-loaded, if for instance you had 3 different anchor points in the cave, we can start building variations of that. But this is totally not an NCRC required knot right here. So you just want the single figure 8, the double figure 8, those are kind of your standards. But when we start getting into party knots, we can have a tri-loaded knot, for example. I don't know, maybe you had really weak rock in your cave and you needed 3 anchors or something, but It's kind of a trick.
Oh yeah, guys, got this book from the library. Sale.
Ooh,
Like they were selling it, and I was like, no.
perfect. All right. So that's our double-eared knot. That looks great.
Thank
Now one other figure eight knot that the NCRC that has on its list is the figure eight follow through, and this is typically done around an anchor. And unfortunately, I'm not Chris Bauer, who has a giant. What was it? He had like a bench that we like turned sideways, and it became a tree in his cave, in his house, in his cave. My goodness. And so last time we went through some of these knots and anchors things, we were at his place and we like turned his bench sideways and we used it as a tree. Basically I'll probably grab a chair here. Not even in this book. Just slam this in my pile of Ford's junk that nobody else can see. Nice, nice, very nice.
I can take photos of this.
All right, so what they like for this is the figure eight follow through. And what the figure eight follow through does is it creates an anchor around an object, right? So what we want to do is maybe rappel down this pit right here, and this is our tree. And so we're gonna maybe anchor over this using a figure eight follow through. That is just one of many options that can be used for anchoring, right? So what we do with a figure eight follow through is we sort of create a 8-shaped knot in the first place. Whoops. There we go. So there's an 8. And so it's like a little pretzel, right? So you start with a cross on the knot, on the strands. You come around the bottom strand here and then come up through that. And you see how that's sort of it looks like an 8 maybe ish. When we get creative like that, maybe. Did that work for everybody? We'll do it one more time here. So you cross it. So we've got this little pinch here. It comes around the bottom strand here and through the top. Like that. And then basically if there's an object that we're rigging around, maybe I'll just do this small anchor.
How are you getting the second loop?
Oops, how did I what now? Sorry?
Get to the second loop.
Oh, let's do it again. So Bo likes to call this turning the key. So you turn the key.
Oh.
And so you get a little pinch thing here, right? And you see how there's this strand that comes down? Your loose end needs to wrap around that bottom strand. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
And then come back up the top.
Like you're double crossing it.
Yeah, you double cross it. She's correct. Let's do it again for him.
Yeah.
Because it's hard online, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So so we're gonna cross it, and then you see how I've got this loose end here, and this strand is on the bottom. What I'm gonna do is take my loose end and wrap it. Whoops, too much rope. Wrap it around the bottom.
It's like you're J hooking the majority of the rope.
Yeah. See how it like came around, and then it's gonna go up through the.
That's a J hook.
Okay.
So violent. So it kind of looks like an 8 right there.
Okay.
You got an overhand. Okay, so what we're gonna do is just one cross here, right? Like that, just a loop.
Okay.
And you see how this strand is coming down the bottom, and this one's my loose end?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the loose end is gonna just come around the front and wrap around. You see how it kind of just wrapped around it? That's all I've got right now.
Kind of. So loop, cross it over.
Cross it around the front. And then basically it's going to come up through the top.
Okay.
And so that's a basic 8 right there. It's a little hard to tell what you've got on the video. I think that's an overhand still. So let's start maybe with an overhand and have an idea. Yeah, so an overhand knot is basically your pretzel knot, the one that you do for like tying your shoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is instead of just going straight back up into that, we're gonna wrap it around one more time and then come up.
Okay. So one more time.
Yeah, I think you got it. Kind of like loosen all your strands and get them all straightened out, and I think you've got it. So I'm gonna do it small, that way you can see, but it's that cross, you cross it one more time across the front there, and then come back up the top.
Okay. Yeah, it's the smallest version.
Yeah, because you got a little rope there, so it's a little hard. But what might be helpful for you is, especially if you're doing a lot of caving stuff, maybe think about getting, you know, a little bit of like maybe a 10-foot segment of 10 mil or 11 mil rope. Like a little 10-foot segment's enough to do practice knots and stuff in normally. So, but absolutely. Oops. Okay, cool. So we're gonna start with that basic 8 that we just had on one strand. And we're gonna wrap around our anchor here. And all you're gonna do with a figure 8 follow through is you're gonna just trace it. So the strand that just came around my tree is the same strand. I'm just gonna start following that and tracing it back around.
From the flow end, right? The drop end,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
What you call that?
Yeah. So, oof, it's gonna come in from this side actually. So you're gonna, how do I describe this? Why don't I do it here? So like basically, maybe hard for people on the phone to see, but basically it's gonna come around the tree and then come down the same side. Yeah, your tail's short.
Have a long tail.
Have a long tail on this one. And then we're basically just tracing that same knot that we just made. And so all like this is like the dumb portion of it where once you've got it set up, all you have to do is follow what you already did. And then pull it through, and we've got a figure 8 followed through. And it's called a follow through because you're just following through the thing that you had previously done. So back that back off. So we had that little 8 that we had made earlier. And I only have like a little strand because I've got a little anchor here, but so we got it coming back around, and the side that just went around is basically what we're going to follow around. And you're just following the same direction of everything that we just
Ooh, I love that.
yeah, it's easy, right?
It's a cute, pretty knot.
And the thing is, if you tie your figure 8 on a bite, you can tie your figure 8 on a bite by doing that too. Just you wouldn't put it on an anchor. So like for some people, this is easier when you're tying your figure 8.
It's not clean, but
Yeah, it's all there though. That's actually
it's
a figure 9. Yeah, you got an extra strand. You,
You just did
but yeah, that's actually a figure 9 knot. So you twisted it twice. I think when you, which is fine, right? It's so the figure 9 is a real knot. And what it's just a little easier to untie than a figure 8 actually. So that it has a use. And it's just as strong. It just
1, 2, 3.
it's one extra twist. That's all that a figure 9 is one extra twist around it. So cool. You've got a
Is that,
pretty good
is that
figure
kind of,
8.
I feel like I'm twisted.
The dressing isn't perfect, but
Like I should have stayed on
yeah.
the inside when I went on the
yeah, exactly. But you can just flip the strand like that. Boom, done. You see how that
outside.
dressed it
Okay.
now? So you just flipped it over. Anybody online have any questions still?
Let's see, figure 8.
Almost like you could do, yes?
Maybe. I've never
You
done
take-
that, but if you do,
You take your 2 strands, twist, twist.
that is the start to a trick knot that I know, but oh shit, that really works.
Yeah.
Holy cool. That's awesome.
It's almost like you,
Show
guys,
them that.
I figured some trick out.
This is definitely a cool way of doing it.
So you're holding your 2 strands, loose end, rope end, 2 strands, granny knot, 8. Keep it, keep it. You almost need a blue screen or something. Okay.
Damn. So she just basically twisted it and then grabbed
Right,
the end the other way, huh? And grabbed the end, and it makes a lot of sense because it is 2 twists.
Because I think that's where I was getting confused, and that's how
Yeah.
I got 3.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I was like, twist, 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 twist.
That makes sense. So because I've been following it through manually, which what Nina just pointed out is that if you just twist it twice and then pull the bottom strand, the
Right,
loose end
here's my
through,
loose end. Here's my rope.
that works. I learned
Granny knot.
something.
Engineer brain. I'm just like, how can I make this better?
Yeah, that is something I did not think to do. That's pretty cool. Yeah, because you're twisting it anyway. So twist, twist, right? And then the loose end, she's just putting straight through the top.
Does it work? Is it still the same thing?
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Mine's a little messy, but yeah,
Okay. Well,
it
maybe if
makes
it's, if
sense.
you know,
it makes sense
I
why
guess
that
if
would
you're
work.
trying to learn it,
Uh-huh.
it makes sense.
So it makes sense why that would work. Cool.
That's how a lot of climbers do it, the twisting method.
See, I just learned something. See, I don't climb, and you all knew about that. That's cool. Easy stuff.
It's just like, yeah. I think there's just too much torque in the rope, where so it gets a little messy.
It does. Okay. So on the list, the next couple knots, let's start with the butterfly knot, and then we can, well, actually, do we want to do the bowline because we've got an anchor here right now? We can do that. Okay. Oof, your
Yeah.
book got wet, didn't it? All your pages
It's
stuck in
a
there.
used book.
Very nice. So the bowline. The bowline is another knot where you're basically tying it to directly anchor onto something. And so what I like to do with the bowline is I have a little mnemonic for it. It's that same thing where you create a loop. And basically this time around, what I like to think of is that this strand is my tree. And the tree has roots. So the tree roots go under this hole. Do you see kind of how my tree here, it's like the strand is behind my hole? That's my tree. And basically what I do is, here's my anchor. So I'm gonna wrap around my anchor. and here's my tree. Here's my loop. This is the bunny. So the bunny comes out of the hole. It goes around the tree and it sees the hunter, so it goes back into its hole. And that is a bowline. That is a bowline knot. Now it doesn't look like a whole hell of a lot right there. But it's this loop portion around this ring that makes that a bowline. And that's a perfectly safe knot to rappel right off of like that. And I'm just tightening it all back up. Now the bowline in and of itself, unfortunately can capsize, and I'll just show you real quick how that capsize happens. When this strand flips like this, you see how this strand just straightened out? If for some reason I'm like pulling on this real hard now, you see how it just pulled out? So the bowline in and of itself is a knot that can capsize, and what we like to do to make sure that we are safe is that after the bowline is tied, you need to lock it off. And the way to lock off a bowline is you can either back it up with an overhand knot. So basically I would take this and throw an overhand knot into it, which means that when I try to like pull this strand apart, you see how it won't like pop anymore. It just tightens this overhand knot. So that just prevents it from popping. Or the other tie-off method is called the Yosemite tie-off. And all that does is it takes this strand and it goes behind this one here. And you basically follow this strand of the knot going back up the tree. So it comes around and follows the tree up like that. And so that's a Yosemite finish. And again, with this strand now here, if I were to pull it apart, it's not going to capsize and fall back out. So let me do the basic bowline again. That way, oops, I pulled the wrong strand here. So that we've got everybody kind of caught up. So Kyle, if you want this anchor here. Okay. So basically, here's you turn the key, you gotta have a hole and a tree. The strand comes around. Here's my bunny. The bunny comes out of the hole, goes around the tree, sees the hunter and goes back in its hole. And then, so that's my bowline knot right there. To do a Yosemite finish, it comes around the back of this strand here and around the front and back up the tree. So that's the bowline. Now some people don't like the bunny hole thing. There's something else also called a snap bowline. And what the snap bowline is this is actually a lot easier for a few people to understand for some reason. So you start with that weird hole again, and that strand that is what I keep calling the tree. You take a bite and push it through. And that's just a temporary bite that just kind of hangs out there. Then you take the loose end, put it into that, and then you're just going to pop this back up. And that's a little hard to do, not with an actual anchor, because now it's a little messy, but let me show that here. Yeah. So basically, it's like sewing. You pop this into here like a little stitch. And then the loose end goes into it just temporarily. And then that tree pops back up, and that's it. That's now your bowline. And some people like that. So that's another way to tie a bowline.
Is
But-
it safer than the other one? Or
No, they result in exactly the same knot. So it's neither safer nor unsafer. It's just a way to tie it. So it's called a snap bowline, but it's just the way that you're tying it. But for some folks, like me, who are a little bit more procedural, like step by step, you've got that tree, that anchor, bunny rabbit comes out of the hole, around the tree, and back into the hole. And that's a bowline. And then we can tie it off. All right. Hopefully that all looks all right for folks.
Is this anywhere close?
That's a hitch of some kind.
Okay.
But here, why don't I watch as you do it? And
So I was just trying it off the
Uh-huh.
off the anchor first. So twist.
Mhm.
Tree.
So the tree is the part that has to be the long end. So
This-
the
Okay,
yeah,
that's
and my tree is behind my hole, so you might just like flip it for yourself. Yeah.
so now
The
you
bunny
can
comes
come
up
out,
the and then
around,
around the tree
back.
and then back in.
Okay.
And then it's a matter of just dressing it.
Well,
And
this
it's-
is
it's
supposed to be
hard.
this is supposed to be like
The anchor, yeah. So, and that's what's hard is sometimes when you don't have an anchor, it's just hanging loose and all the strands are a little weird.
so you keep that behind.
So it's gonna come out from under the hole, yeah.
Oh. Round.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, I have this right. And we just have it twisted. That should be correct. Yeah, so you don't want to like tighten like that because then it pops it. But like you see how it's that loop that's around the rappel line. That's it right there.
Okay.
So that's your bowline right there.
And then how
can-
is it?
Mhm.
How is it popping?
Oh,
What's that?
how's it capsized?
Yeah.
So basically, if these two strands popped like that,
Okay, I see.
you could yank that through accidentally. So that's why you always want to tie it off, and that can be
So it's-
either with an overhand on the end of it. But I've started to like the Yosemite finish because I see where it leads to other knots as you play with future knots and things like that. So. And there's a few tricks that after you master the bowline, there's like other knots that build off of it. But for the purposes of going through NCRC's entry skill knots, that's kind of what I wanted to make sure folks could cover.
Right.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, I was pulling it that way.
Yeah. And that's why it's
Intentional.
visually difficult about not doing it around an anchor sometimes. Cool. So that's another around an anchor knot. What I think I'd like to do now is go to the butterfly knot. And that's another very common knot in caving that we do a lot of. So the butterfly, what we like about it is it's a tri-loaded knot. So you can actually load it in 3 directions. There's 2 ways that I'll show you guys how to tie it. And they're both, again, equally the same. It results in the same knot, equally as strong. It's just a matter of how do you prefer to tie it. Sometimes one thing's easier for people than another. So what I'm doing here is the twist method. So similar to what Nina showed us earlier, you twist, so you get 2 twists. Yep. And what you want to do is, oh man, last time I did this at the GSP, we had a good laugh because this is your snowman, okay? You kind of see this is his head, here's his body, and then he's got 2 legs, right? He's gonna flip his head under between his legs and shove it up his butt. So, we had a pretty good laugh at GSP last time we were doing this, and we were
Which strand are you
Alien.
pulling?
okay. Let me explain this one thing real quick first. So now that we've got this knot, what's kind of nice about the alpine butterfly is it's tri-loadable. It's equally loaded in 3 directions. So if this was longer, basically you can pull this in this direction, pull this in this direction, and pull this bite in this direction. And basically it's a tri-loadable knot where it's equally strong in all 3 directions. So that's kind of why we like that knot. You'll see them in like traverse lines and things like that, or at a rebelay. But anyway, so we have our bite. All we're doing is twist, twist. Close.
Almost.
Yeah, almost.
Just one.
Twist, twist. And I like to stick my thumb in the body of the little alien guy, because that way, like I keep that open. But head, body, and then the 2 legs. It's gonna fold over the front. And basically the hard part is just maintaining that middle loop. And what you're gonna do is take that bite of the knot between the legs and up through that middle segment, pull the 2 ends, and you have the butterfly knot. Think so? It's hard to tell. It's not set until you've pulled the 2 ends. So you want to pull the 2 ends nice and tight and then set. Yeah, that is a butterfly. That is it. That is perfect. Yeah, so it's hard to tell what it is until you pull those 2 ends, and then that tightens up the knot, and that's how you set that one. Not everybody loves the twist method, because the twist method sometimes, your fingers get stuck in weird places with it. So twist, twist. I'm maintaining my thumb in the middle twist there. It folds down the front, and you basically maintain that middle hole with your thumb. It's going between the legs and through that middle, and then it's only set once you've pulled the 2 ends. Now, there are times when this knot, once you've loaded it, like you've rappelled on it or whatever, it gets super, super tight, and it's really hard to untie as well. Again, small, weak person's tips on how to untie a very loaded knot. Again, grab that meaty part under your thumb, and instead of trying to work that bite down through the middle, what you're going to do is the weak point on an alpine butterfly are these 2 side legs here. And when you're having trouble untying a really loaded one, you grab that meaty part of your thumb and push down on that, and that should break it open enough that you can start working that back through. So if this is super loaded and super, super tight, basically what you're going to do is grab that meaty part of your thumb and go break that, and then push it through. So that's tips and tricks from weak people. Now, there is another way to tally an alpine butterfly. And so that's the hand wrap method. We wrap it around our hand 1, 2, 3. Try to keep it a little loose because.
Which end are you wrapping?
Oh, so you see how this is the loose end?
Yeah.
We want the long end to go around your hand. So we're gonna 1, 2, 3 strands around the hand like that.
Okay.
You take 1 finger and you grab the middle strand, like go under the top strand, grab the middle strand and pull it up. So now it's like it became the top strand. Mm-hmm. And then it goes over both strands. Mm-hmm. And then basically you loosen those 2 strands and pull that now bottom strand up through the top.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord.
Sexy. All right.
I love that.
What my friend Chris Sewell likes to say is the butterfly likes to spread its legs, which it does because you have to pull. Yeah, you do have to pull the two legs for it to be set. So the butterfly does like to spread its legs. So this just was kind of perfect with that conversation right there. Now, what I like about each of these two methods, right? The twist method, when you twist and then tie it, it's hard to get the two strands crossed because the one on the left stays on the left, the one on the right stays on the right. So I've had it happen before where somebody, the weight of the rope was already over an edge and we needed to put a butterfly in there. And he tried to tie it with the hand wrap method. First off, all that weight of the rope around your hand is super not comfortable. But second, he ended up crossing the strands. But if you do the twist method, basically the left stays on the left, the right stays on the right. You won't ever have it, do this weird thing where it ended up like this in the carabiner. So that's kind of nice for that reason. The reason why I like the hand wrap method, so like there's always a reason for like there's a time and a place for everything is how I feel, right? So one method's not better than the other. There's just a time and a place for each one. So the hand wrap method, part of what I like about the hand wrap method is that part of what we like to use an alpine butterfly for in caving is sometimes your rope gets a bad spot in it, right? So like, for example, we were climbing on it and there was something sharp and basically the rope was rubbing against that rock. And now we've got a weak spot in the rope, or maybe the core, got shot or something. The core is like separated on the rope and you're like, oh, there's a bendy weak spot in it. Well, what we like to do is we try to isolate that segment. And so the alpine butterfly can be used to isolate that segment of rope. Oftentimes what cavers do is they're just, tying regular alpine butterfly and you would have to pass that knot. I think Kaylee and Mason have both passed knots on the wall with me. But basically you're repelling, and then there's this bad piece of rope and it's isolated by this knot. You would have to pass over the knot and then continue, but at least you're not using that bad part of rope. It's isolated and this knot is strong and holding the whole thing back together. What I like about the hand wrap method of tying an alpine butterfly is you don't have to have it wrap 3 times. You can actually wrap it 4 and do a double alpine butterfly. And by doing that, you can keep track of which bit of rope was bad. But you can also create a second loop in it. And what I like about a double alpine butterfly, if I can dress my knot properly and not lose my bite because I used a small bite. All right. Let me just do that over again because I used too small of a bite. All right. Oops. All right. So what I like about this is that you can do a double alpine butterfly, and instead of having that one strand that has the bad rope, you now actually have 2. And basically what you can do is as you're trying to like repel, and need to pass the knot, you can now clip your cow's tail into the both strands here. And one of them's bad rope, but the other's good. And so you can actually clip into it and then pass the knot a lot more easily by doing that. So just food for thought that there's a time and a place for everything. And the hand wrap method leads to being able to do iterations of the alpine butterfly.
Can you show the double again with the hand wrap method?
So you know how we did the hand wrap 1, 2, 3 strands, and we went under the first, grabbed the middle, and went over and did the thing, made a knot. Whoops. And it looks like this. All we're doing is a second iteration of it where instead of 3, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're still going to go under the first, grab the middle 2 this time. And I need a big bite, so I'm just kind of working some slack into it. And then basically you're going to grab, fold it over the other 2 strands. And then it's going to, the same way, just that one's going to go through the middle. And then spread the legs again so that it's set. Yeah. And now you've got a double alpine butterfly. So instead of doing 3 strands, you did 4 and went under the first, grabbed the middle 2, and then tied it that way.
How difficult is this when you're like
In duress on rope,
yeah,
you
on
start to
rope,
learn how to like
and
be calm,
it's
dangling in your,
heavy.
it's heavy, and you're
Dark.
staring down and being like, there's still 200 feet to go and my rope's core shot. Oh shit. Yeah.
So when you wrap it around 3 times, does it go under the first or the second?
Yeah. So let's do the hand wrap method one more time, right? 1, 2, 3, right? I'm taking 1 finger, I'm going under the top strand, grabbing the middle strand. That one pulls to the top,
Okay.
goes over both strands.
Over both.
And now it became the bottom strand, you see. And then we're just going to
Okay.
push that through the middle where your hand was. And then it should look something like that.
Huh. Okay.
And Sonny, I think you cave somewhere near GSP, right? So I know this weekend, a few of us are going to be down at GSP. If you want to like come and hang out one of the nights or something, Saturday night, I think I should be available. We can do this in person too. And that
Okay.
might be helpful.
All right, that's this weekend.
Yeah.
Okay. What time?
We're going to do the survey thing in Climax on Saturday. Yeah. So you're free to come join us with the survey stuff. We'll probably be out of cave maybe around 4.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll head back to GSP. So if you want to be around sometime that evening, we can practice in person, which sometimes helps with the hand motions, you know.
Right.
Are you guys going to Climax or GSP?
Climax. We'll meet up at GSP, go to Climax Cave, and then come back.
Okay.
But I was just so excited about GSP.
Yeah.
I was so
GSP's home. Yeah.
oh, free $8 a night home.
Right. So that's the alpine butterfly and kind of some of my reasons why I like the 2 different methods. Let's talk about, we've got a couple of hitches, and then we've also got the Pro-6. Anybody got any preferences what we want to do first? All right, so I like to teach Pro-6 and munter hitches together, because actually when you start doing them vertically, they actually make a lot of sense together. But in this particular setting, we're just learning them sort of as knots. Let's get started, I guess. We'll build the building block for doing the Pro-6. So the first building block for the Pro-6 is like the double fisherman's knot, which you'll probably see as well on your cow's tail. So when we do the program for new cow's tails, everybody gets a free cow's tail and you can tie your own cow's tail. This is sort of a preview for that because this is the knot for that. So the fisherman's knot, double fisherman's knot, is kind of like the overhand in the sense that, you know how you tie an overhand is just, you know, your regular pretzel knot, right? The double fisherman's is kind of like an iteration of that where you have an extra wrap. And so what you're doing is you create an X and you wrap it around one more time, basically. And then, so that's kind of what it ends up looking like. Unfortunately, it's like a messy ass knot. And then you pull it through the hole that the both of those had created. And sometimes people use this guy as like the bottom knot on their rope when you're rappelling. I don't love this option as the bottom knot. And the reason why I'll tell you that is that in America, a lot of us use racks and some people use full racks, and the full size rack, this knot's actually small enough that on a full size rack, it can pop through the bars if you have like a big rack. So I actually love the figure 8 because it's a big fat knot and it will actually stop you. So like thinner rope, like what I've got here, like on a 10 mil here, I'm not 100% that this doesn't just like kind of pop through the bars on a full size rack. So I don't particularly love this as my bottom knot. And if you're going to do this, if you're going to make a bottom knot, you can have some nice iterations with a figure 8 as your bottom, because if you did have to join rope later, having that figure 8 already on the bottom allows you to like thread the rope through, and then you have a nice big bite of that figure 8 that you can clip your cow's tail into and pass the knot off of. So there's a couple advantages to having a figure 8 as a bottom knot. So that just as of my recommendation or what I personally do, I like a figure 8 at the bottom. Anyway, back to the main point, we were trying to do a barrel knot. Basically, it's a wrap around the strand. You're going to bring it around again and make it an X. Does that kind of make sense-ish? People kind of see what I just did there. So kind of makes a loop, comes around again and makes an X across the front. And then basically you're going to come around and pull through. This one's a little bit hand messy, I think. Loop. Ooh. All right. So here's that crossed loop, right? We're going to come around the back, and you see how it crossed it on the up here. It's made like an X around the front. And then I take that strand and I come through the bottom and then through this, like through 2 holes, basically. Top. Yeah.
Bottom and top loop.
Exactly. And then you see how it's kind of like, when you tighten it all down, you should end up with what looks like a little X.
X on one side, straight on the other.
Yes, yes,
They're
exactly.
following on one side, they're X on the opposite.
Yeah. So that's what they call a barrel knot, or the double fisherman's knot. And so that's the beginning of what we're going to do for our prusik loop. So we're going to do prusik loops next. And so for those of you here, I've got some cord. So that's some prusik cord. And yeah,
It stresses me out.
it doesn't. See, I don't do much rock climbing, but like what's nice about these
I
prusik.
just see it from the wall.
Oh,
When
gotcha.
they're there, and then they're like, I saw a prusik knot, and I'm like,
So
die.
I actually really love Prosics. And so I will tell this quick story where Chris Bauer, he's kind of a big dude, right? I gave him one of these Prosics, literally one of these, one of my purple Prosics. And we do munters and Prosics together for a reason, because this is kind of a break, basically. And you can rappel on a munter, but if you Prosic while you're muntering, you basically have a fail-safe. Anyway, his first time kind of rappelling with one of my Prosics, he wanted to see whether or not it would catch him. So he kind of let go, and sure enough, this little 6 mil cord caught him. So I will tell you that it freaked me out, because he's a big dude and he kind of was playing around on rope and he just let it go. And I was just like, oh God, but it caught him. So it works. Math does not lie, it turns out. So anyway, when we make a Prusik loop, the type of cord that you want is some form of dynamic. And so I will also discuss, because this came up recently with somebody. This right here, what I've got, this is Dyneema. Dyneema is hella strong and hella light, right? So Dyneema is getting more and more popular to use on stuff because this is stronger than steel. And you wouldn't believe it, but you can you can rappel off of it. You can build anchors with it. This stuff's really, really strong. The thing is, it is not ideal for Pro-Six. I just want this as like a little disclaimer because it's got a really, really low melting point. So if you buy Dyneema, read the spec sheets on it. It will specifically say do not use this for auto belay type knots or hitches, because the really low melting point of this material means that as a friction grab, it'll actually just melt instead of grabbing the rope.
There's too much polypropylene in the thread, which is plastic.
I am glad you know this stuff because I don't quite know all that, but absolutely, like all I know is low melting temperature, do not use for frictions.
It's slick, it's light for a reason, it's plastic.
Gotcha. So the stuff's plastic.
Part plastic, let me see that.
And you don't want to use that for Pro-Six. So I use dynamic cord for it. And the general rule is that the diameter of the rope that you're going to be using it on, you want to go 3 millimeters smaller than that. So I'm generally using a 6 mil Pro-Six myself, because I will be on anything like 10 mil, 9 mil type rope. And I know my 6 mil Pro-Six is about 3 mils less than that. The other thing is that I have struggled to get 7 mil or 8 mil Pro-Six to grab on rope before because I just don't weigh that very much. So 6 mil Pro-Six, very, very strong still, dynamic cord. I'm cutting approximately 38 inches last I measured one of them, but I kind of just have like this one strand that I keep at home that I just like cut other Pro-Six against. So my science isn't very precise here. Anyway, that fisherman's knot, what we just did, what we're going to do is tie a fisherman's on each end, and that will help us create a closed loop. So similar to before, we go around the rope, create an X, and we come back around one more time. Because we're doing it over something else, it doesn't have that really confusing double loop thing. But you've created your X, and you're going to come cross it one more time, and now pull it through. And you see how it ends up with the X on this side and the double parallel thing on the other. And so what you're going to do is you're going to tie your next one on the other side around the other strand. And so that, again, around it. So you've created a loop around. You come around one more time and cross it one more time. Yeah, unfortunately. And if I've gotten my directions correct, you should have two X's that kind of nest together. And sometimes I don't get my directions correct, and that's okay. And we just, retie it. But, and I did not get my directions correct this time. So basically all it is I went over the top and I needed to really go over the bottom. And basically the end result should be that we have two X's next to each other that kind of nest with each other. My tail's a little too long. I'm going to correct that. Okay. So what you can kind of see here, it may be a little hard in the lighting, I don't know. But you've got two X's right next to each other, and you see how they kind of nest together. That's kind of what's going on for a Pro-Six. And so what this does is it's super strong. You wouldn't be able to like undo this loop here, but this is now a closed loop, and that's a way of joining rope. So that's a joined rope ends, and you've got like this nice loop. So that's a Pro-Six loop. Now the Pro-Six hitch, what we're going to do is, Ooh, not quite. Ah, yes, it is that actually. Just pull the other thing through. I gave you really stiff rope. I really apologize.
I think it's stiff. so
yeah.
I don't know.
So what
This
is
is the only one that.
Yes, the one that moves, so they butt up against each other like that. That's exactly all it was. Yeah, and yours are actually perfect because your strand that, whoops. All
It's
right,
just
this
loose
is
and
me.
weird. I gotcha.
So they should be nested.
Okay.
Oh, they ended up,
Opposite.
yeah, opposite. So you might undo one of them and then make it a loop
I'm
again.
sure.
All right, Kyle's got it. It looks good. That's perfect. Cool. So that's a Prusik loop. And what we're going to do with the Prusik loop is it's a friction hitch. So we're going to hitch it onto our other rope. So why we went, again, 3 millimeters smaller on this is that this is what we're going to use to put onto another rope. The way I like to do the hitch here is I actually center the big knot. And I'll show you how that gets it out of the way for me later on. What we're doing is you kind of lay it over the rope, and I'm going to grab this big knot and I'm going to roll it around the rope 3 times. Oops. And so you see how I've got 3 loops here now. What I do is because I have the knot in my hand, it'll make sure that it gets offset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll one end up towards the other. And my rope is a little stiff here myself. So what it did was, you see how the knot is now not in the center? By rolling one end, I was able to offset it. What that's helpful for is later when I want to put a carabiner into this here, it now has gotten it out of the way. And what you're going to look for is that the Prusik hitch is bridged over all of the strands. You see how when I had rolled that around the rope 3 times, basically this bridge is left going over all of those strands that got rolled. So that's our Prusik hitch. Now, why we like a Prusik hitch is if I were to, and I don't really have this anchored here, but anyway, if I were to have this clipped to me, for example, the nice thing about the Prusik is it doesn't want to move up and down the rope. And that's kind of hard for me right now because I don't have this anchored and all sorts of other problems. But basically, oh yeah, if you pull that, thank you. Awesome. So basically, if this was Prusik hitched and my weight was on it, basically it's gonna not move. You see how I'm yanking on it? It's a friction hitch and it's preventing this from moving. So it's a grab. And basically, if I were to be climbing with it, I can loosen this by grabbing the hitch that's around the rope and it'll slide up and down. But at the point when I let go of what you call breaking the knot, if you let go of this segment here, it should slide until I've let go of this, at which point you see it's not moving and it's grabbing the rope that way. So that's kind of what that Prusik hitch is used for. Is it's an up and down knot, and it's a progress capture where if you wanted to use it in a haul system, for example, and this rope was basically being hauled up, this is a rope grab of some sort, and that won't let go. So, and like I said, Chris Bauer, big dude, he's deliberately fallen on one of these to show that it'll hold him, and it totally did. So shocked me because I wasn't expecting it, but yeah, so that's all that is. And that little method of grabbing the knot, having it centered as you're rotating it through, and then just rolling one end to the other that really helps offset this for the final product, and that'll get you a little bit tidier, I guess. So that is the double fisherman's and the Prusik. The knots that we have left, we've got a square knot, munter hitch, clove hitch, and the water knot. What I'd like to do is talk about munter hitches while we're here, because when we're vertical, I like to talk about Prusiks and munter hitches together because they're kind of progress capture and type items. So the munter hitch, I did not bring a carabiner in. Hold on.
Yeah.
Oh, you got?
There's one.
Oh, sweet. Oh, I had that on the floor.
There's like.
Awesome. That is perfect. Okay, so this is an HMS carabiner. Oddly enough, the exact kind of carabiner what we needed. My house is a mess, clearly. So this is actually one of my favorite carabiners. Crazy person that I am. So this is a full steel HMS carabiner with a little tab lock here. You can descend on a munter hitch, and so that's exactly why I have this particular carabiner, is that if I was one day doing a bunch of short drops, I may not use a rack, I might use munter hitches. And this actually is a really good option to like put directly on your harness, because it's got this little tab lock down here. And as a steel munter or steel HMS, this guy's a lot less likely to wear out than an aluminum HMS carabiner while you're doing a bunch of, you know, rope work on muddy old rope, for example. So anyway, this is one of my personal favorite carabiners. But anyway, the reason why this is an HMS, do not ask me to pronounce what HMS stands for because I actually don't know. It's something in German, and it's a very, very long word, and that's why we abbreviate it to HMS. But it's the shape of this carabiner that is what makes it an HMS. It's got this narrow, pointy bottom and this wide top. And you can see the top is flat here. The munter hitch basically likes to use one of these wide top carabiners. Ovals will work pretty good. You don't really necessarily want a D carabiner for it because if it slips over the corner, it's just going to be caught around the corner. So part of the reason why the munter hitch likes this is just that big wide top really helps get
Sorry,
yeah.
I just looked up the word.
Oh.
It's very long.
Can you pronounce it, or what is it called? Halbmastwurfsicherung. It's HALBMASTWURFSICHERUNG. It is a very long word, and it's
Hafmaschwurschberg.
there we go. That's an HMS.
Wurflerug, which means half clove hitch belay.
There we go. So that kind of describes exactly what a munter hitch is. It's a half clove hitch belay that is exactly. I mean, it took 10 words placed together, but that's what HMS is for. So it's specially designed for the munter hitch. Anyway, what we're gonna do is tie the munter. So a munter basically, again with these loops, right? Turn the key, you've got a loop. And what I do is I come across the front. You see how it kind of like loosely has this little bend in it. And then I follow that other loop. And that's it. That's a munter hitch. It's just like this loose stranded thing. And then we grab our Halfmuster something thing, HMS beaner, and we clip through those two ears, and that is the munter hitch right there. So you can see it's just got this loopy that holds the middle strand there, and then loosely comes over the end like that. So if I put my, ooh, will that fit? maybe, no, it actually doesn't. Okay, well,
Can my foot be the carabiner?
yeah, yeah, as long as you hitch around it. Does this fit? Nope, I have non-ideal chairs for this exercise. Anyway, the Munter hitch again. So you create a loop, and we pinch that loop, and we come around, and then just follow that ear, and you see how that kind of created two loops, and this one loop coming around the middle there, and we have that HMS carabiner. And why we like a Munter hitch. Now, the Munter hitch, basically, you see how the rope slips through like that? Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, she's muntering off her foot right now, which is awesome. But you see how this strand moves here? You can actually rappel this rope like this. Now, the other nice thing about the Munter is if I wanted to flip it, you see how it just flipped over when I pulled the other strand? You can actually capture progress. And so what that means is now my rope is slipping the other way. And so this is a two-directional sort of hitch, similar to how, the Prusik was a two-directional stopping thing. This basically is now ascending. Like if I were pulling on that end, it can capture progress as a belay, or I'm going to flip it again. And you see how this strand is now the descent line and it's coming out this way. So it goes in both directions, and that's kind of what's cool. Now, I'm going to show you guys how to tie off a Munter hitch. Because obviously if it can just like slip like this, you just don't want it to just be free dangling and like, whee, like if you let go accidentally, now somebody is just, descending when they didn't want to be descending, right? So now if I were assuming that this was in ascent here and I was capturing progress, what you want is to always flip your Munter hitch into descent before you lock it off. And the reason why is this hitch likes to get really gummed up and boogered. Like if it was in ascent and you were to like lock it off in ascent, it kind of gets jammed up and tightened around that carabiner so bad that like it's super hard to untie later. So you always want to flip it into descent first before you try to tie it off. Well, I'm going to ask you to hold this while I try to tie it off because I just need to anchor. Okay, so I'm assuming it's in descent right now, right? This is my descending strand. You see how it kind of slips like that, right? If I wanted to tighten it back off, you can actually pull this and then just feed that through. You see how nice and tight that got when I did that? So for instance, like if it was feeding, or it was in ascent, and say like, look, it's in ascent, and then I want to flip it back over to go into descent so that it's able to get tied off. Often once you flipped it into descent, it's very loose. What you can do is pull this strand here, the middle, and then you just feed that slack back through and it's nice and tight and close to the carabiner. Whoops, did that and then I boogered it, but okay, fine. So now to tie off a Munter hitch, to prevent somebody who's on this from just like slipping, you would just, what I create a half hitch, and you do a half hitch and then an overhand is what I'm trying to say. To create that half hitch, I make what I think looks like the number 4. You kind of see like that's the 4. I reach through and I pull this strand up and I've got this nice big bite here. And then I take that bite and I make an overhand knot around that one strand. And I like to roll my knots because again, small, weak person here. And you can tighten your knots really nicely by rolling them. Because all you strong people, you guys like to like yank that, right? They do, the strong people. And like sometimes the rope is really crusty and stiff and they're just like yanking on it and it's you're fighting the rope. For me, what I found is if you roll the knot itself, it gets it nice and tight and I don't have to work as hard as some of those strong people. Anyway, so we'll do that lock off one more time so people see it, but I just unlocked the overhand knot. Once you've unlocked an overhand knot on a munter hitch, you want to grab the hitch itself so it doesn't slip. And at that point, you can unlock the half hitch by grabbing the strand and yanking it through. Now I have my munter hitch available for ascent or descent. If it's descending, I'm basically just, doing that. So basically, here's my half hitch. Here's my munter hitch. When I want to lock it off, I'm going to grab the loose strand, the unweighted strand. I'm going to create a half hitch by making the number 4, grabbing the loose strand from that, and I've created this bite. I'm going to take this bite and make an overhand knot. And me being weak, I roll the knot. And then, you can yank that. So that's the half hitch and overhand. That's how you lock off a munter. Undo the overhand, grab the knot, the hitch, and then you can undo that by yanking the loose strand. And then you're back to just the munter hitch where you can ascend, descend. Really cool. Right? So that's the munter hitch. You can actually rappel on that. So if you did it this way while on your harness, you can actually rappel on that in an emergency or something like that. And similarly, you would, half hitch and overhand to lock yourself off on it and break strands and stuff. So, and if you want to, that's funny that the HMS was just hanging out. Okay. So similar to a half hitch, the clove hitch looks very, very similar. I struggled with the clove hitch because I was like, I don't understand what I'm using it for. As a caver, we don't use a whole heck of a lot of clove hitches places because they are locking knots. The place where NCRC uses the clove hitch turns out to be locking the furno, like locking the final knot on the furno as you're packaging a patient. The clove hitch actually can also be used to anchor onto a tree, to rig rope and stuff like that too, but that's not the primary use that I've seen it used in NCRC. The biggest thing to remember about the clove hitch is it's kind of 2 half hitches. So the way that I sort of look at it is if I were to come around my anchor, maybe doing it this way is a little easier for me visually. So basically what it does is you create an X. We like to loop and create X's today. So you see how it made an X right here. Basically all you're going to do is take the end here and put it down the middle of the X. And that's a clove hitch. It really is that simple. So you're going to, again, just make a loop. And you see how it crossed itself. It's got a little X there. You come around again and through the middle of the X. Boom. And that is something that can back out, as you can see. So if you were anchoring this as, this is a tree and I'm about to go descend off the rope with this, I bring it around one more time. And remember that double fisherman's knot? My tail's too short. Okay. Well, let me work a little bit more slack into that. Okay. So you bring it around one more time. And you're just going to double fisherman's that. And that's a perfectly acceptable anchor for rappelling off of this strand now. So as a caver, that's another application. In the rescue world, the typical place that clove hitch is getting used is on the Furno patient packaging.
What?
Yeah.
Just created a granny knot,
Whoops.
so I don't.
All right, so we've gone through all of those knots. The last sort of rope type knot that I had for today, before we go into, there's only one thing in webbing that we'll go over. So the last rope type knot is a square knot, and the square knot where I've typically seen it in NCRC usage is, again, patient packaging. It's kind of the way to finish off the like rigging of the sked, for example. So again, patient packaging type usage. Now, there's a couple ways to do a square knot. There's the right over left, left over right method. Maybe I'll take a piece of cord for this. That might be a little easier to see. Because this is really long, so my other end is way over there someplace in that pile. So I'm going to use the cord for it because I do have two ends here. All right. So right over left, left over right. I don't get this right every time. So watch me mess this up. Okay. You're gonna, oh boy. So I have an easier way of doing this because I am not good at this. So you're gonna basically create this, pretzel knot first, and then you create this loop here, and you're gonna right over left, left over right. Is that it? No, it wasn't. I didn't do it right. Sorry, because this is exactly why. So you create a loop, and Mason's really good at this because he showed me that he does this better than he does my trick method. So right over left, left over right. What it is that's it. That's the square knot. So for those who can see, you can see that this is both strands are coming up over this loop here, and the both strands on this side come under this loop over here. Now, the square knot is also one of those knots that, similar to the bowline, likes to capsize. So if we were to like pull these two strands, for example, you see how it just like popped on itself and broke, and then this could back out, and so the whole thing came apart. It's a knot that likes to capsize. What I learned is that you can use the capsizing of the knot to like tie it. So like you basically do the capsize backwards. And I have found that I cannot brain the whole left over right, right over left thing. And I always like do it wrong the first time. So what I learned is take the capsize function and work it against the knot so that you can tie the knot using that. So what I do is I make a bite and I make a girth hitch. You see how like it's just looped like that? It's just a little girth hitch. And what you do is you take the loose end of the other side and put it through that girth hitch, and it can just sit there loosely. And then the back strand of the girth hitch just flips over that, and you get a perfect square knot every time without having to like think too hard about right over left, left over right, is my strand in the correct spot or whatever, because you just have to do that one flip. So that's sort of how I learned how to do a square knot without having to use too much brain power. You can totally do the left over right, right over left thing, which again is, you create like your little pretzel knot first, and then you create this loop here and you pinch that. And both those strands have to be under. So this strand has to go over, and that's a square knot. So clearly I can do left over right, right over left. It's just a lot of brain work for me. Or the other method is basically you grab a bite and you create a girth hitch by flipping that over itself. And you can see how that's a girth hitch right there. And then you grab this loose end, poke it through, and then this back strand here, you're just going to flip it over. Whoops. And as I did that, I popped it. Okay. Boom. Girth hitch. Strand goes through, and then this pops over and you get your square knot that way. This is also the knot that cavers use when they coil rope and they end the coil. So, yeah, that's the other use of that square knot. I'll probably get that. So,
Yeah, I can't do that.
growth hitch.
My rope is too not enough.
Put that in through there.
Yeah.
And then basically I'm gonna just flip this strand over
Okay.
Essentially weave.
and then it's my little magic square knot. It's the only way that my brain can handle it. Under stress.
Okay.
So.
So I've got.
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
Through
Mm-hmm.
and over.
Yep.
But that.
Just keep pulling it. Yeah, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Yeah. And then basically let go of this strand.
Okay.
And
There it is. I see.
yeah.
Okay. I was like, it's somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's because you're still hanging on to the one thing, so that looks weird. Cool. So those are all sort of the knots. The one other thing that I'm not going to go over is the trucker's hitch, just because the trucker's hitch these days sometimes is or isn't used in NCRC, and there are other methods for back ties, pre-tension back ties. But basically, we've done all the knots that lead into the components of the trucker's hitch. All the trucker's hitch is that if you had a very, very weak tree that was the one closest to the pit that you're trying to whatever, you would use a trucker's hitch to back tie to a stronger tree that's further back. So I'm gonna move us on to. I'll take this one.
It's different than this.
You're using two different.
Well, they're just trying to differentiate the ends.
Okay.
That's why they're different colors.
If you guys want to grab a piece of webbing or whatever. I'm gonna do the water knot. I actually have a water knot in this piece of webbing already. And what the water knot is used for is anchors using webbing. And so webbing is this flat stuff. I don't know how familiar some of you guys are with webbing, but it's
It's nylon
Nylon.
strapping.
yes, exactly. So it's nylon strap, and this stuff is hella static and hella strong. I did not look up my numbers before we had this talk, so I apologize that I don't have actual math for you guys, but just know that we can often build anchors using webbing and then put our rope on it. These can be used for extending anchors off of a tree, for example. And a couple of ways to do that are like the wrap 3 pull 2, where you might be wrapping this around your tree 3 times, just making 3 loops around your tree. And then you would join the 2 ends with what we call a water knot. And then you could pull 2 of the strands out of those 3 and hook your carabiner onto it for your anchor. So then you've got 1 stable strand still on the tree, and then those 2 strands what you pulled for that wrap 3 pull 2. The other way that you can do it is something called a basket hitch, and that's where you create a loop out of the webbing first and then just basket it around your tree.
Slip knot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So and that's like you can clove hitch around things too. Oh yeah. That actually works. You would
But-
probably want the end,
Just saying.
locked off and tied. But yes, you're totally allowed to growth hitch things. No problem. That's perfectly safe as well. So now webbing is this we're using this inch tubular nylon webbing here. And what we're going to do is tie an overhand knot on one end. And so that's just your regular pretzel knot again. So you've got, again, your minimum 4-inch tail. I've got a little bit longer than 4 inches here, but you need a minimum 4-inch tail, right? As we talked before. And so you've just got your regular overhand knot in it, and it's nice and flat because it's flat material. Now to create a nice loop, what all we do with the webbing to create a water knot is you're going to grab your other end, and starting at the loose end of the knot that you just tied, you're going to grab this and you're going to follow it through from the loose side. So just
Like
around
the back of it.
Mhm.
So it's like.
Yeah, exactly. Because it could totally fall out like that, but like you're just gonna follow that knot around. So that's all you have to do with the water knot. Is you tied that first overhand, and then all you're doing is just following it. So it's a very low intensity knot. just follow the prior strand, and you can see that I've got a nice long tail on each side, minimum 4 inches, so it doesn't back out. But you want it to lay nice and flat like that. But all you did was tie an overhand and you followed it through, and this is super duper strong. Now we've got this nice big loop, and we can play a few tricks with this where, like, for instance, we can do this basket hitch where you would have the two loopy ends here and clip it, and now that's an anchor. We could put a rope on that other end here and rappel off that if we wanted to. But that is one cool thing you can do with it. Another fun thing you can do, I'm going to go embarrass myself. Also, this piece of webbing is just a little too long, so I'm going to adjust that first. But I am going to embarrass myself real quick here for you all. Let's make that much. Okay, so I know that for me personally, probably around a 10-foot piece of webbing is the right size to do this. This, I think, is a 15-foot piece, so I'm just kind of shortening it a little bit. But there's my overhand knot. I'm just going to take my other end again and water knot it by following through. So,
Yes.
yeah. So the other way to kind of know how much you need is to wrap your waist 3 times. But what I'm about to do is, well, I don't know how I did that, but that's tangled. All right, ignore my tangle. So now I've got this water knot loop, right, of webbing. In a bad situation, you can do what they call a hasty harness. So all I'm doing is I'm sitting into my loop here, got my arms through the 2 ends, gonna reach between my legs and pull that piece up. And what you're going to do is now loop this 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Whoops. And what I can do is grab a carabiner. Thankfully, I still have carabiners hanging around. And clip, clip. I've now created myself a hasty harness. That's a sort of an emergency, if I broke my harness and I'm, out of luck and need to get back out. This is not going to be comfortable in any way, shape, or form. However, it is strong enough that that is a nice trick.
This is the way the army does it.
Yes. Nina's like, well, I know about these. Anyway, that water knot is handy for webbing, and these webbing pieces can be useful for very many things. So keep that in your back pocket as a tool. All right, that I think was all of the content that I had for today. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, problems?
Well, thank you so much. This is awesome.
All right, awesome. And if anybody does need extra help, like I was saying, we will be around during the survey stuff, hanging around GSP this weekend. So just feel free to stop by and tell us what you want to practice. All right, cool. Well, on behalf of the Greater Cincinnati Grotto, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Hey.
All right.
That's so funny.
See, that is going off.